All right, in this video, I want to talk about this passage here, 2 Timothy chapter 3, the part that's highlighted in green and the part that's highlighted in a purplish pink here. Verse 1 here, it says, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come." This means some rough times, right? And it said the last days. This was written 2,000 years ago, roughly. And we're coming to this point because check out what this says. "For men shall be lovers of their own selves." And I was just making a video talking about how people really don't care about anybody else, right? They'll goad each other into doing something stupid. And when they do something stupid and it really messes up their life, they're just like, whatever. Not my problem, right? They're covetous. That means, like, they're envious of what other people have, right? They're not happy with what they got. And that's part of what enslaves people here in America is they keep working harder and harder and more in a job that they hate that's just running them down and ragged, not just to survive, but they want to keep up with what other people have. Whether it's a nice home, a nice car, or certain little gadgets they have, all these different things, they want what they have, and they're not just happy with what they got, right? In boasters, these kind of people just talking about, how great they are all the time, right? Always trying to make themselves feel good, and the only way they can make themselves feel good is not just to talk good about themselves as if everything they've done is something amazing or great, even though other people have done the same thing or even done it better. They got to get other people to go along with it because that's what actually helps them. They need other people to feed the delusion about themselves, right? And then there's the proud, right? This is like a hard-hearted stubbornness. It's like pride, where a lot of people, they want you to put pride into your work and be proud of this and proud of that. And it's like, have you not read the Bible? It talks a lot about how pride comes before a fall, and you're getting all proud about these things. But why? Why you put so much into it? Like, look at all this work I've done and how amazing it is. Yeah, okay, yeah, you put a lot of work into it. You did something pretty good. But it's not going to really matter before you know it, right? Let's think about anything you could do. Anything, literally. Anything. Other than getting the gospel to somebody. Because that will last forever. But if you sit there and you build a awesome monument, an awesome building, right? You do an awesome piece of artwork, a sculpture, painting kind of thing. You come up with some kind of invention, some kind of idea, or anything like that. You do something great. Even start a family and have a bunch of children. You die, everything you've created falls apart. Your family eventually dies. And in the end, God's going to destroy the world and the heavens and recreate it. So you're all proud about all the stuff that you've made that in the end doesn't really matter. It's just something that boosts you and your ego and your self-worth, right? Because a lot of things that we get proud about aren't actually really beneficial, right? Not that they're not like people doing talented work and different things, right? Through acting and artwork with music and painting and sculpting and all that stuff. I'm impressed by a lot of what some people can do, all right? But most of it doesn't help anybody. Most of it, if anything, just distracts people from life. And that's what people really want. And they look at that as the good thing. I'm distracted from how much I hate myself and hate life. And just find it hard to keep going on. And then when I get these distractions and entertainment, it helps me keep going. And it's really sad, to be honest. And then blasphemers, right? How often do you get upset if somebody says something about you, right? If you like, even if it's like your brother or your sister, your friends, yet alone if strangers growing up and even as an adult, if somebody treated you in a certain disrespectful manner, you would say something about it or do something about it or just separate yourself from that person. But when these people start talking about God and they disrespect God, they make jokes about God and the Bible and Christianity and Jesus, that you just ignore it or you even laugh about it, right? This is becoming more and more acceptable and normal, and people are shocked if you don't go along with it, right? Disobedient to parents. And this one's tough because there's a lot of parents that, I mean, the children should be respectful of them and obey their parents, but the parents basically enable them and raise them in a way that teaches them that it's okay to disobey them, right? And there's a lot of parents that are just, I guess, maybe not physically abusive, but emotional in some way. So it's, you got this rough thing where if you side with the children, you see how the parents are right. And then when you side with the parents, you see how the children are right. And it's like you can't really choose any side in a lot of these things. You just got to let it play out because it's like they're both wronging each other, right? They're both wrong and they're using it to justify the wrong that they're doing to the other person, right? And that's how it is with a lot of confrontations. Right? The unthankful, right? And again, it's not appreciative of like how well they have it, right? How many people complain about their lives when their lives are very well off. I see that now and then. Like I think about how I grew up, and then I hang out with the youth in my family, and I figure they'd be like happy and joyous, but a lot of times and I shouldn't say a lot of times, sometimes they're bummed out because they didn't get what they wanted and things didn't work out this certain way. And it's like, wow, if growing up, I would have been happy in your shoes right there. But all right, sometimes that's just how it is. Unholy, that means that you're not set apart from the world. Holy, that's what holy means. It's set apart. Kind of like how some people, they look at church buildings as being something holy. Like they might cuss up a storm, but if they come near a church building or go inside a church building, they're like, oh, I should watch my mouth. Right? You're treating that building as if it's holy, as if it's special, right? And so when it's calling you unholy, it's basically saying that you, especially as a Christian, you should be the temple of God. You should be holy. You should be separate from the world, right? You shouldn't be like the rest of the world. You should be a peculiar person. And even if the whole world is mocking such a thing, why are you trying to fit in with a world that crucified Jesus, right? Jesus was a perfect man that loved everybody and tried to help everybody, and they killed him. Why do you want to try to get along with that kind of world? James tells us that being a friend of the world is to be an enemy with God. Yet these people don't mind that, right? And it says, without natural affection. This is one to think about here, because I guess what I would say here, I guess there's different ways I could talk about it, but there's people who they would treat their pet better than they would treat their fellow human. And sometimes even better than their own children. right? And that's unnatural. But I have heard that there's some parasites that can affect people. That, like, cats have some parasite that would make you want to get more cats. I just learned about that. I don't know how that works out, but that explains why there's some people who just have a lot of cats and they keep getting more cats. It's because they have some parasite that would make them want to get more cats. That's weird. That's very weird how that works. And that's what you gotta understand about parasites. Something that you might want to look into, parasite cleanse. A little off subject, but if you have some kind of parasite, even if it's just an overgrowth of bacteria that is normally good for you, but too much of it in your stomach and digestive system can start to influence you to start craving certain things, like too much sugar, which is actually very bad for your health, as you probably know, causing diabetes and immune issues and weight gain and all this stuff. A lot of negative effects by that. But if you have certain parasites within you, they can get you to crave things that you know that you need to stay away from. So a parasite cleanse can actually help you in some of those ways. But what a lot of people's parasites are actually devils, demons, these demonic beings that basically come and go as they please with these people and use them and abuse them. And they're all tormented, right? And they lack that natural affection where they can walk by somebody who's suffering out on the streets and they don't bat an eye. They're just like, whatever, their problem, not mine. But then they see a little puppy. Oh, I gotta go save it. You know what I mean? Like, I understand I don't want to see the puppy suffer. But doesn't the person on the street mean more than that puppy? I mean, what if it was somebody related to you, or a brother or sister or something, right? Is that what it takes to get you to, care? But I don't know. Truce breakers. I guess this happens in day-to-day life, right? You try to work things out with somebody, and then when your guard's down, they stab you in the back kind of thing. But I think we see this more with nations, right? They keep making these peace deals, and then they break them. False accusers, I see this all the time. I just got one this morning. I had a video talking about how there are some people who are saying that they're praying that they don't get raptured because they want to stay and help the people that are left behind, showing that they really don't understand a thing. And I was talking about how they're being deceptive, right? And how they're not true believers. And somebody left a comment saying, oh, wow, you're saying that if we don't believe in the pre-trib rapture, that we are not really saved and that we're devil possessed? And I was like, you just twisted everything I said and added to it. I never said that you have to believe in the pre-trib rapture to be saved. I was like, did you even watch the video? Did you even listen? Do you even care? You just looking to start something? Like, wow, it's just these people, right? That's, I think, the biggest problem that I've come across is that people just don't listen. Because you could explain everything, and you could explain it with really good, simple detail, and you could do it quick. Because you know how a lot of people don't have attention span. So you got like 1 to 3 minutes. You're like, boom, you tell them something very simple. And then they act like you didn't even say anything to them. And they do like the opposite or something of what you said, or respond in the opposite manner. And you're just kind of like, what? You can't tell if they're like, they got some kind of brain dead issue, or if they're just disrespectful. And they just spit in your face right there. Because it's hard to tell. Some people, they don't like you, so they're going to disrespect you in ways like that. But there's other people where they just can't focus, right? The brain has been warped by technology and the way of life and their diet. Incontinent. I don't know if I said that right. Incontinent. Man, I'm not going to try that again. I think I looked up this word before, and I think this has something to do with not being content, if I remember correctly. And again, that just ties into what I was saying before about how they're not happy with what they have, right? They always want something else. A lot of times it's just more. They're never satisfied, right? Fierce. Oh yeah, we see this. Because even when if it's not the people who are fierce themselves, you can see the fierceness in the people. I've experienced it myself, where you may not be doing anything you think is fearful to somebody, but when it comes to all of a sudden the sports come on, and you're watching yourself a UFC fight, a boxing fight, you're watching a football game, a hockey match, and there's a fight brewing, you're like, kick his ass, knock his teeth out, right? Knock his block off. Like you're all of a sudden, you don't care about that other person. You just want to see them demolished and make you feel good to watch somebody just annihilate somebody else. As if that other person that's getting annihilated doesn't matter. Right? Like, for my entertainment, go out there. Like, in Mike Tyson's prime, you're not even prepared for this. Go out and fight him so I can watch you get blasted by him. And you just knock your jaw off. And thank you for your sacrifice for my entertainment. And you just love it and eat it up, right? Oh, and you see this one all the time. I get this all the time. That's why I spend most of my time just with Jesus here, is there's despisers of those that are good. And I shouldn't say this as some kind of brag, as if I'm some good, perfect, holy person. That's not true. But compared to the people that are in the world, I appear good. Like, if you want to judge me next to God, next to Jesus Christ, next to an angel, I'm going to look like a pile of dog crap on the street. No doubt about it, right? But when you turn around and you can compare me to the world, I look like a goody two-shoe. Because I'm like, hey guys, do you not care about each other? You don't care about yourselves? Like, come on. Well, why are you like that? Like, come on. I was just thinking of an example, but I'm not going to use it. That's why I paused there for a little second. But, yeah. They don't like the fact that they're sitting there having fun, like, again, watching the fight, and they just want to see someone get, like, basically die, right? Or get crippled. And just get wrecked. And then make jokes about each other, putting each other down, getting each other pissed off, rage baiting them. And you're like, why are you guys doing this to each other? Why don't you care about anybody else? I mean, come on. And you're a goody two-shoe, right? And then they might not say anything, but all of a sudden they're just quiet and like, oh, this sucks. Can't have fun because JD's here. Right? You can sense that kind of attitude, that kind of feeling. And it's like, well, I feel the same way. Right? So I guess it's best that, we just don't hang out in these situations, at least. We got traitors, right? A lot of people backstab you. A lot of people backstab you and then blame you. Well, why'd you turn your back to me? It's like, well, because, I thought you were trustworthy. I thought you were my friend, my brother. That's why. Yeah. Heady. I need to look that one up. Heady, it seems like it might tie into high-minded, where they want to be the leader. I run into this all the time, where my mindset is, hey, even when I'm talking to younger people or older people, I do my best to just treat everybody as an equal, as if we are all at the same level, and treat them with respect, unless, they prove otherwise, right? But there's a lot of people who, when you're sitting there trying to treat other people as equal, they see that as some kind of weakness, that you're not trying to be top dog. Well, then they'll try to be top dog, and they'll try to take over the conversation and act like they know what they're talking about, and step up and do something like that. And it's like, no. And you cut them down, and they're all mad at you for not letting them step up. And it's like, well, yeah, because for one, you don't know what you're talking about. For another, you're just selfish. You don't care about the truth and what's fair. You're just trying to take control because you think that someone here should be in charge, that someone should be the head, and that there should be an alpha, because you're acting like a dog. You're acting like an animal. Right? And you lack some maturity here. And that ties into the high-minded. Well, they think highly of themselves. Right? All these people think exaggerated, puffed up views of themselves. The lack of humility, realizing that, well, anybody could do it, I suppose, but it doesn't have to be me. But their mindset is, nobody else can do it. Only I can do it. Like a Donald Trump. Nobody else can do this. Only I can do it. Everybody knows it. I'm the greatest. I can bring the peace. Nobody else is going to be able to do it. They're all going to mess up. I'm going to do it, right? And everybody has the same mentality, as if they should be the head guy at their job and whatever, on their sports team or whatever it is. But then when they have that opportunity, they just run things down into the mud. They break it all down. Again, like what we're seeing with Trump. This one is, I guess, the big one where I really want to look at this one. It says, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. And this is what I see all the time, right? Because I try to encourage people, especially family and friends when I can, to get into the Word of God. Spend some time praying. But, they would rather do something else. Right? I understand, it's not as if you can't do other things. Like, the younger folk, they want to listen to music, play some video games or stuff like that. Yeah, there's nothing necessarily evil or wrong about that. Listen, you could probably be listening to some awful music that I wouldn't recommend, but yeah, doing something like that is not necessarily evil. But if that's all you do, and you don't want to spend any time with God, just imagine if that's what you did with everybody else in your life, right? Your parents want to talk to you, right? And you're just like, no, I'm going to go do this instead. It's like, hey, just spend 5 minutes. Let's talk for a minute. Tell me how your week is going, how your day is going, what's going on in life. And you're just like, no, I'm going to go just chill, listen to music, or I'm going to go hang out with my friends, and you go do something else, something that gives you dopamine. I want to go through my TikTok scroll and just sit here until my brain shuts off and I just pass out or something, right? Do anything other than sit there and be quiet, talk to God, and read His Word for a little bit. Because you don't get any dopamine hit from that. You don't get any excitement out of that, like, woo! Right? It's not like when you're listening to the music and then all of a sudden it gets to that point in the music where you're like, whoa, I feel alive, right? Or you play in the game and you get to a certain point, right? You beat it or achieve something and it's like, yeah. Or you're hanging out with your friends and you making their jokes and all this stuff or whatever it is. You get that dopamine, you get that woo. But when you sit there quietly with like your parents, just talking to them a little bit, it's like, oh, this is something I have to do. But you will do that, to have that relationship with your parents or even with your siblings or something when you don't want to. But then when it comes to God, they're like, this is so boring. And yeah, that's how it's going to be at first, because you're so used to a certain kind of lifestyle, right? It's kind of like those women who they get taken out by all these guys to do these fancy things and they're treated all well, but these guys just do that to then use them, right? They use them whether they just want somebody attractive on their side to show off to other people, and then someone to, mess around with physically. And then when they're like, all right, I'm going to move on, they just drop them. Like, I'm bored of you, I'm going to go find somebody else. And they get all, they're used to that being treated like that. And then when there's a good guy who probably should just stay away from that type of woman anyway, because she's been busted up there in her mental view of things, she can't enjoy a good guy who would even want to be with her because he's boring and dull and all that, when he's actually a good guy who actually would love her and take very good care of her and appreciate her. But she doesn't really want that. She wants some kind of excitement, fun, entertain me. That's what she thinks her significant other should do, just entertain her, right? And that's what we want from God. Oh, you don't entertain me. It's not fun. So, yeah, I know you're a good guy and everything, Lord, and you love me and, you die for me, but you're not husband material, right? You're not fun to hang out with, right? They basically love their drug, whatever it may be, more than God, because it brings them pleasure. And the drug doesn't necessarily mean it is a drug. It can be whatever it is that makes you feel good, that has you addicted to it, where you keep going back to it, even though you should spend some time doing some other things, right? And it goes on to say, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, from such turn away. And we see this a lot in different forms of Christianity, such as Catholicism, Orthodoxy, and a whole lot of the Protestant denominations there. They have a form of godliness, right? Their fancy cathedrals and the music and the garbs and the rituals and all that, right? And saying Christian things, Christian phrases. But they deny the power of God to save them, where a lot of them don't even believe the gospel. They believe they have to do all these fancy things, jumping through flaming hoops, repenting of all their sins, and standing on their head while they say their Hail Marys and Our Fathers and do the sacraments to then hopefully be saved, right, in the end. So they deny the power of God, that he actually saved them, to act as though he came into this world as a man and died for them and rose again just for shits and giggles, that it was pointless. It didn't really do anything because they still have to go save themselves. And or they deny the power to God to actually protect them and keep them from these things and to overcome these things. Like, they don't believe he actually has the power to protect them and provide for them without them being in the world and of the world and acting like the world and getting caught up in all these things, right? There's so many ways that they'll call themselves Christian and wear a cross and, mention Jesus now and then, especially if they go to the church, they're talking to a priest or pastor, or they're talking to someone like you who they know is dedicated to Jesus. They'll say some things about Jesus and Christianity and this and that, things they think you want to hear. And then when they go off, they go into the world diving head first, saying, I'm glad that's over. And you can't tell the difference between them and an atheist or any other unbeliever, right? And the way they live their life. Like so they got this form and appearance of it, but they deny the actual power of it. And it says, from such people turn away. And that's the hard thing to do, right? Because some of these people are family and friends. And it says just to turn away from them. Because you got to realize that they don't want to come out of the world. They made their choice. And you hanging out with them, you're basically starting to do what they're doing. You're trying to hang out with them because you love them and care about them. You feel good hanging out with them. You want them to come along with you and come out of the world. and you're not willing to let them go to be with God, right? So you're starting to deny God for them. And when you start to hang out with them and do that, you don't end up dragging them out of the world. They end up dragging you back into the world. So that's why God, he's not telling you, oh, I don't want you to have your family and friends and I want you to just be miserable. He's trying to protect you. Right? And then going on in the purple, it's a little bit of a change of thought here. But it says at verse 6, "For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away by diverse lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth." So you see, like he's telling you to stay away from these people because this is exactly what they do, right? He makes a comparison to these type of people as the ones that basically come to the wife who's home alone while the husband's at work and puts ideas in her head and manipulates her, right? And sometimes this is something to get her away from her husband. Sometimes this is something to get her away from Christianity, where it's like ever learning but never coming to the knowledge of truth, right? Kind of like getting into some Gnosticism and the New Age mysticism and learning of the astrology and all this stuff and doing the horoscopes, right? Learning all this stuff that they may find interesting, but they end up drifting away from the truth, which is Jesus Christ, right? And they say the knowledge of the truth. Jesus says that he's the truth, right? And they may appear to be as if they're Christian because they'll claim to be Christian, right? Because they have a form of godliness. But it says at verse 8, "Now as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses." You may not know who those two people are. Those two people were the magicians in the Pharaoh's entourage there. So when Moses, he turned his staff into a snake, these are the two people who were like, oh, we can do that too. And they did it to try to get the Pharaoh not to trust in Moses. So you see how they try to be manipulative and act like, yeah, we are on that same side. We have that same power. God is with Moses. Oh, God's with us too. Look, we can do that. But Moses' staff, when it became a snake, actually killed and ate the other snakes. And I don't know if the Pharaoh saw that, right? And then Moses, when he grabbed the snake, it became back a staff, and he used it as a staff, right? So you see how they withstood Moses. And it says, "So do these also resist the truth, men of corrupt minds, reprobates concerning the faith." And I was seeing that, like I brought up with a person that was saying, oh, well, what if you pray that you're left behind so you don't get raptured so you can help the people here, right? It's like, hey, I know you're being deceptive. I know you're a false Christian, right? At first, I just let them talk more and expose themselves more, not letting him know that I was on to that he's just pretending, just to get more. Let them expose themselves. And you could see that he doesn't truly believe, just making things up, acting like he does. And you can tell by the way he lives his life and the things that he says, and especially saying, oh, I want to be left behind. Well, yeah, I know what you're doing because you're being deceptive. Because I see what you do. You try to use the scriptures to try to manipulate everybody else and put everybody else down, but you don't apply them to yourself. You're a hypocrite, and you're just trying to use the scriptures as a way to control others and to try to put yourself in, again, being heady and high-minded, putting yourself in an elevated position above others and put everybody else down under you. And that's why you want to be left behind, because you know that you're going to be left behind. And you want an excuse to tell everybody when you're not taken. Oh, yeah, I prayed to be left behind. That's not how it works. If you're truly saved, you're going, even if you don't want to go. But you see how they're reprobates concerning the faith. And then at verse 9, "But they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as all theirs also was." Because eventually with these Jannes and Jambres, eventually Moses was able to do things that they could not do. Right? They couldn't fake everything Moses did. And that's how these Christians are. These false ones, they can fake doing a lot of things a true Christian can do, right? And appear to be just like a true Christian. But eventually, they get to a point where their mask comes off, and there's things that they can't do, and they can't do it consistently, and they can't do it for a long period of time because they're faking, right? It's kind of like if you're acting, you might be able to act like do an impersonation of Arnold Schwarzenegger to make a joke, but could you do it all day long, right? Could you do that all day long? And that's a little bit different, right? And could you do it every day? And would you want to even do it every day? Even if you could do it, do you actually have the gumption to keep doing it and pretending to do that impersonation for a whole week? And you have to constantly be doing it in conversation. Not that you just spend the whole week alone by yourself. I mean, actually having conversations for a whole week, never using your real voice, pretending as if you are Arnold. Right? That would definitely be a challenge. And that's basically what these people are doing. They're trying to pretend to be Christian, but they're acting. And they can't really be themselves, and they really want to be themselves. And even if they got the ability where they can keep doing it, eventually they're just like, I don't want to. I want to be me, and they just let themselves come out eventually, one way or another. Right? And when they say little things like that, like, oh, I'll pray to be left behind to help the people who are here. Oh, God doesn't need your help. Act like you're doing something noble. If you're left behind, it's because God didn't want to take you. Because you're not one of His. Right? Just people being manipulative and liars. Right? And they live a worldly life, and they don't take care of themselves. And then they want to act like, oh yeah, I'm Christian. Well, how about that temple of God? How's that temple being taken care of? Right? A lot of these people have a lot of health issues. And a lot of it is self-inflicted health issues. Right? I've always thought that was strange. Like when I see like pastors, especially ones that are like overweight, and they're preaching, and sometimes when they get up there, they have to sit down. They can't stand at the pulpit for a long period of time. They have to sit down. And it's like, sometimes they actually preach some good things. They preach some truth. And sometimes like, oh, that was good. But I don't find them really convicting, because I see them as like, part of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control, temperance. And you're lacking that. So your relationship with God there's a hindrance there. And it's an obvious one that everybody can see. All right? So it's like, you imagine this guy who obviously has a problem with either eating junk food or eating too much or eating his feelings or something, whatever it may be, or not able to say no when people give him food or something. I don't know. It could be a mixture of all these things. And then he's trying to preach to others about, overcoming sin, right? And it loses its power, right? When you see somebody who maybe they have some kind of health disorder, like a thyroid issue, and right? But you don't know that. But when you see them and they look like they're basically a glutton, and they're talking to you about, your Christian life, it has no power anymore. At least when I see it, I'm like, How's that life you're talking about playing out for yourself, right? It's like the whole thing where Jesus says, pull the mote out of your own eye before you pull the splinter out of your brother's eye. It's like a lot of people have not thought about that at all. They have no problem going around trying to pull splinters out of everybody else's eye while walking around with a giant beam hanging out of their own eye, right? It's like they don't, and they get offended if you're going to talk about the beam in their eye, but they have no problem about the splinter in yours. That's how some of these people are, right? They can fall right into this, where they got these issues like that. Well, they'll sit there and try to make you feel guilty, to try to manipulate you. And a lot of times when they try to make you feel guilty, it's to get you to shut up and try to put you down in a negative place so they can try to manipulate you and control you, right? But they never apply it to themselves. And if you want to apply it to them, because a lot of times they'll call you out on things that apply to them, they justify it and ignore it, as if it's okay for them but not for you. See, these people, they're manipulative, they're snakes. But I'm getting a little bit off subject. I'm focusing on a certain specific group of people there. But, we were talking about Janice and Jembries at the end there, and I was thinking about some people I know where it couldn't be more obvious that they're not really true believers, but they'll say they are with a smirk on their face, because they're like, well, if I say I believe, you can't prove I don't believe. And it's like, yeah, but one day we'll find out, right? And you just pray for the people around them to have discernment, to not fall for their BS. But, we're being told here to turn away from such people. But, people we care about, they're not turning away from them, right? As a matter of fact, they're made to feel bad by turning away from them. I think that's one of the manipulation tricks, right? You see this with a lot of people who are toxic, and you're like, well, I'm just not going to hang out with you anymore. And then they try to, sorry about that, they try to guilt trip you. Oh, you're better than me, or well, you never really cared about me. I'm just chopped liver, or what about the good times and all these things I've done for you? You're unappreciative. You don't care about me. And, what about my family and this and that? You don't want to see the rest of my family. Like, hold them hostage. Like, you have to put up with my BS if you want to see my family or my children and all this stuff. And the people aren't willing to do what's needed to be done for their own spiritual well-being, for their own peace, and for their relationship with God. And the stuff I'm saying here sounds pretty hardcore to them, so they're just like, no, that's too extreme. That's not loving. What you're doing is actually not loving. You're not loving yourself. You're not loving the other person. You're enabling all these negative things, and you're allowing them to keep going. If you actually want to help these people, you got to get away from them. An example. Let's end it here. Let me go over to it real quick. I have an example of something like this. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 5, we read about a Christian fella who is sleeping with his stepmother, right? He's sinning openly. And they're not doing anything about it. The church isn't enabling it, right? They're just like, whatever, right? We're saved by grace through faith. It doesn't matter. And Paul is saying, no, you're supposed to be a new lump of bread without any leaven in it. So purge yourself from the sin. And he tells them by verse 5, to deliver such a one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus. So he's telling them there, separate yourself from him. Yeah, he may actually be chastised with death, right? But if he's a true believer, his spirit will be saved, right? I know you love him and you don't want to cut him off, but for his own good and for the good of the rest of the church, you need to cut him off. because he's just going to leaven the whole group, the whole family there with his bullshit, right? Because if he gets away with doing that sin, other people are going to be like, well, I can get away with doing what I want to do. And everybody starts justifying their sin. And now you got everybody just living in sin. So for the sake of putting an end to it, you have to cut him off, right? And yeah, it says here he may even die. But if he's saved, his spirit is fine. You're going to see him again. But in this case here, guess what happens? When you read 2 Corinthians, this guy ends up getting cut off from the church, from the fellowship. He ends up repenting. All right? He turns from what he's done, and they let him back in. So if you want toxic people to change, they're not going to change by hanging out with you and you just letting them be toxic. If you cut them off, they have to face themselves. They have to look in the mirror. And they may do one of two things. They may sit there and act like you're the evil person. Well, then you have to let them go about life and mature, right? Or they might face the truth and realize, I'm the problem. I need to work on this. And then they get right with God. And then now you can hang out with your loved one again. But now they've lost the toxic behavior. Right? So you see, this is not an act of hatred and not loving anybody. It's what you have to do when you actually truly care. When you care about the person who's in the sin, when you care about yourself and the other people in his or her sphere of influence. Right? But I can talk about this until I'm blue in the face. I'm basically just going to end up preaching to the choir, because the only people who are going to listen to this and watch a video like this all the way to the end and even agree with it are people who already agree with it and are already saved and blessed with the Spirit of God, and they see these things. But the people who really need it, they're not even going to watch this. They're not going to listen to it. And if they did, they're going to ignore it. And it's just the way things are, right? It's rough. It's got to be how God feels, right? He's like, I'm going to write to them the scriptures. I want to use people as my pens to write out the Bible. And it's going to give them everything they need. And it's there for everybody. I want to make all kinds of copies where everybody could have their own copy. But the only people who read it are the people who already believe it. And the people who need it won't come to it. All right? I see this now and then where I experience something that's just so disheartening and frustrating. And then God's like, yeah, now you know how I feel a little bit on this subject now. I deal with this all the time. And I'm like, oh man, and on the scale you're dealing with it is much worse than what I'm dealing with. And it's just like, well, thank you, Lord, for letting me suffering with you here a little bit and to understand you a little better. Because this sucks, right? You do all this to reach people, but they don't want to be reached. It's sad, really. But it's also nice that, there's other people out there who are saved, they got the Spirit, and they can be like, yeah, I hear you. Right? So that it's not just a complete empty void, right? That there's others that see and they know, right? And this is the Christian life, isn't it? Where the world, they put themselves in what is called an echo chamber, where everybody just repeats to them what they believe. So they never really question their beliefs on anything, whether it's their patriotism, their religion, their political beliefs, their whatever it is, right? They surround themselves with people who are in complete agreement on everything, right? Or they'll switch groups. If they're going to be about politics, they'll be with a certain group. If it's about a certain sports team, they'll be with another group. if it's about this or that, they only surround themselves with people of the same beliefs, so they just get the same thing repeated to them over and over. But in Christianity, that's not how it works, right? We don't get an echo chamber. We get constant objections, right? I think that's one of the things I've never been accused of. At least that I can remember. If I was accused of it, it wasn't legitimate, of being in an echo chamber, right? Because that's not something that I got here, that's for sure. Not in life and not online, right? So at least you know you're believing what you're believing because you believe it. You've had it objected to, and you've looked at all the objections and responses and all this stuff, and you've really looked into it. It's not as if you just constantly have it repeated into your head over and over. So you know you got the truth. So I'll wrap up with that. Starting to get way off here, going off in the left field and what have you, but thank you so much for your time and attention. I just felt like talking about that because you see it. You see how the world is becoming more and more like that, and it's true. The love of many is growing cold, and they love pleasure more than God, and there's nothing you can do about it but watch. I think that's the saddest thing, because anytime you engage with these people in conversations, they'll either shut down and be quiet and try to control themselves because they feel uncomfortable around you, or they'll become mocking and scoffing and try to talk about dirty things to try to make you feel uncomfortable. Even though I grew up doing that stuff, so they can talk about all the dirty, pervy stuff, I don't care. I just don't respond to it and engage with it. But they think because, oh, you're Christian, that's what they talk about, those kind of things, you're going to get all uncomfortable and whatever. It's like, no, that's part of life, you know. That's just how things are, you know. But, you know, what you do with your wife in the bedroom is between the two of you, you know. Don't need to tell the whole world about it. That's just a little weird. But anyway, starting to get real far off out there. But just making examples. I know some people, they're very, very crude and rude. And people think I'm crude and rude, but man, these people make me look like an angel. But yeah. It's rough. It's rough because the people you really want to reach don't want to be reached. And then the people that you're just thinking, oh, they don't care, they might actually be the ones that do. And it's kind of rough to navigate through that at times. Because sometimes you run into so many people who don't care that when you run into somebody who does, you automatically assume that they don't. And then you start treating them as if they're one of the people who is about to troll you or mock you, and then they don't, and you're like, oh man, I'm sorry about that. I was already getting into my kung fu stance, ready to use the mantis technique to take you down, but you're not here to fight, right? I'm trying to play it off there as a joke, but sometimes that's how it is. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time and attention. Don't forget to do what Isaiah said and seek out the book of the Lord and read it, putting line upon line, doing what Paul said and studying that word, showing yourself approved on the God, not to man, rightly dividing that word of truth, and doing what John said and keeping that word, preserving it, protecting it, hiding it in your heart so that God will keep you from the hour of temptation which will come upon all of them that dwell on the earth. And then Jesus will never be able to tell you, you do err, not knowing the scriptures. So be a Berean and test everything according to the scriptures. If you want to support this channel, please like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, share the video, share the channel, interact in the comment section. If you're able to, there's 4 ways you can donate to the ministry in the info description box. But would be most greatly appreciated is your prayers, even just simple prayers of God just keeping us going and protecting us and providing us until Jesus comes and gets us. Just an amen into that should be all we really need. But if you see some things, you hear some things that you think you need to pray about concerning this ministry and concerning me, concerning Christianity as a whole, with yourself, throw that all in the prayer. Because that's what's really going to get things done. Like I was saying, we can't reach these people, but God can. See, God knows them. He's been watching them their whole lives. He knows what can reach them and at what time he can reach them with it. So he'll wait for that certain timing, and he'll give them that truth. And it might be something that just shatters down their strongholds and towers that they're building up and cracks them all down. And they come crumbling down and they eat humble pie, and next thing you know, they're a completely different person and you can talk to them. Right? So you got to pray. Pray, pray, pray. So just amen in Jesus' name to that. We should be good to go. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. I'll see you in the next one, and may God bless you and yours.